This is McKernan, and this is my LS576 Makerspaces project with Dr. Lee. I've been having a problem with my shirts for a while. That my clothing, my shirts specifically, develop a little tiny hole or a little series of holes right in the center of the shirt, right around my waistline. Pretty obnoxious. It's ruined a lot of my clothing, actually. So I went to the internet to try and figure out what was going on, why that was happening. And a lot of people suggested it might be insects. But that didn't make sense to me because I would think that insects would attack the entire shirt, not just one area. And all of the shirts that were damaged in the exact same area. Then another suggestion for the problem is laundry. And again, I think that there would be holes developing on other parts of my clothing if the laundry is what was causing it. Many people say that their crossbody bags, so bags, they wear across their body on one shoulder, can cause holes in clothing, which makes sense. But I very rarely wear my bag in a crossbody position. And when I do, the strap does not come anywhere near the area where the holes were developing. So I wasn't sure that that was really the problem. Many people said seat belts for the same reason, really, as the crossbody bags. But again, it seemed odd to me because my seatbelt doesn't really cross at my waistline. It crosses a little bit lower, and the crossbody part doesn't cover where the holes were in my shirts. Not only that, but I also discovered these holes in a couple of my pajama tops, and I do not wear my pajama tops in the car, so that couldn't be the problem. Many people theorize that there's some sort of chemical interaction with laundry detergent or with chemicals in our clothing from your tummy button. But this just seemed like a really weird theory to me, and I wasn't really sure that that was true. And then this theory made sense that it's your shirt rubbing against your pants or your jeans buttons. That makes sense to me. That's right around the area where these holes were developing. The only thing is, I don't have pajama pants that have buttons or snaps in that position. Like I said, some of my pajama tops were also getting these holes. And then I read a couple of people suggesting that the holes are caused by granite countertops. When you lean against the countertop, the fabric catches on a rough edge or on the unpolished under edge of the countertop and causes these holes. And this made sense to me. I'm really short. I'm not quite 5 feet tall. I do lean against the counter when I'm doing dishes or using the sink so I can reach the entire sink area. So this made sense to me that maybe the granite was causing the problem. So I decided to test my theory. I took a t-shirt that had been stained and was in the rag pile, and you can see there are no holes in it. I ran it alongside the under edge of the counter right in front of the sink, which is where I would most commonly lean against the counter. And sure enough, little holes, a series of little holes developed on the t-shirt cloth, just like has been happening to my clothing. So I decided I was pretty sure the problem was actually my granite countertop. So I went back to the internet for possible solutions about what to do with my granite countertop. Some people suggested mending my clothing, and some people suggested ironing interfacing into the front of all of my tops. And then some people suggested wearing an apron every time you use the sink. I'm an only parent of 2 kids. I teach full-time, and I'm going to grad school. I'm an incredibly busy person. I don't have time to take care of any of these problems with my clothing, and I'm not going to remember to grab an apron every time I go to fill up my glass with water or to dump something out in the sink. That's just not going to happen. I also saw some solutions talking about using special epoxies on the granite. I didn't want to stain or damage the granite, though, so I ruled those out immediately. But I certainly wasn't going to do something, to my clothing to fix the situation. The problem isn't actually the clothing. The problem is the countertops. So then I saw this solution, a company called Olay button covers. has created a little, actually a little maker project. These little button covers that go right over your snap or your button on your jeans, and they are really pretty reasonably priced. They have free shipping. They're about $14, and you get a pack of 4 buttons, 2 black and 2 clear, and you put them over the rivet or the snap or the button on your jeans, and then people say that this helps the problem. I don't know that I am never going to be able to keep track of these little tiny silicone pieces, that I'm going to be losing them all over the place, and that it will start to get rather expensive, and I don't want to spend money on something that's already made. So I decided that what I had to really do was cover the counter somehow to actually tackle the problem where it was happening, the counter. So I came up with an idea. I had been at first just draping a dishcloth across the sink and trying to make sure there was a dishcloth always here. Of course, people would grab it when they wanted to dry their hands, and it would fall into the sink. It would fall off the sink and get dirty. So one day I was standing recently at the sink, and my son came home with a snap bracelet, and he snapped it on my arm. And I said, "Hey, can I borrow that?" And I snapped it onto the sink edge, between where you would stand at the sink and the sink, this little ledge here, this thin strip of granite, and it snapped. And so I was looking for something to do for this project, so I grabbed a dishcloth, and then I had to go get some more snap bracelets at Target. They were only $3 for a pack of 3. And I snapped them on, and sure enough, they held the cloth really well. If you don't know what a snap bracelet is, it is a narrow bracelet. It has got metal inside this plastic covering, and it lies very rigid and flat until you snap it against something, and then it curls up in a circle. So it became the perfect thing to hold down my dish towel. The only problem was that the dish towel kind of slid around, and it looks kind of dorky. It's got some rainbows and unicorns and stuff in it. I don't know. It looked kind of weird. I did love the idea, though, of putting this cloth here and strapping it down with these snap bracelets. Super cheap. I could take the snap bracelets off and wash this dishcloth just fine. So I decided I would sew the snap bracelets into the dishcloth in a channel so that they could be pulled out. So the first time that I tried this, the first iteration of this project, I took the plastic covering off of the snap bracelet. So you can see this is what the inside of it looks like. But after a day or two, it started to get kind of icky and rusty, and I didn't want it to stain the counter or the cover, and I didn't want it to be rusty and gross. So I went back to Target and bought another set of snap bracelets and kept the plastic on them. And then I went and I sewed 3 channels, one here, one in the middle, and one at the other edge. So you can see into a dishcloth that I just folded in half. So it was super easy. I do have a sewing machine. That made it even easier, but it was not a lot of sewing. And then I slipped the snap bracelets into the channel and wrapped it around the corner. It looks so much nicer. And then I, of course, tested it out. I have not had a hole in my shirt since I did this about 2 weeks ago. And it has been actually really great. Dishcloths are super inexpensive and very easy to find. And I can use the same snap bracelets, but change up the dishcloth if I want a different pattern or if I want to put this one in the wash. So I am really happy with my finished counter cover. And it has solved a big problem for me and will save me money in the long run because I won't be damaging my clothing. I have a couple other friends who've been having this problem as well. So I am going to make them some counter covers too. So what I learned in doing this whole process is that actually I am a maker. I've always been a maker. I am a super practical, do-it-yourself kind of person, and I always want to try and solve a solution before I pay somebody else to fix it for me. So I just never really had a name for it, but I am definitely a maker. I, though, really discovered in trying to come up with something for this project that I am a problem solver maker and not as much a tinkerer kind of maker. I don't tinker that often. I don't really honestly have a lot of time to tinker. This is something I really need to work on as a person, probably. I should tinker a little more. But I love to solve problems and I love to do things for myself and inexpensively, if at all possible. And so I'm definitely a maker who loves to solve problems by making things. And going through this whole process really made me see that. What was important for me as a teacher to understand with that is that I think I tend to want to make makerspace projects for my classroom always be solving a problem and always be very directed. And perhaps I really need to examine some more of the tinker type activities for students to participate in, because certainly, as we have all learned in this class, that is a very important aspect of makerspaces. I think the phrase that helped me the most in all of our readings so far to really understand my role as a librarian in the Makerspace is described in the Makerspace Handbook by Libinka. In there, they describe different roles that Makerspace leaders can take, and the research librarian role really made sense to me. I always encourage my students to think for themselves and to look things up themselves, and I will help them learn how to use a database or a search tool or a research tool, but I won't show them the answer. I'll make them find that themselves. And if I can get myself to think of leading a makerspace in that way, I think I'll be much more successful as a teacher using makerspace activities and hopefully creating a makerspace lab for my library. Here are my references, and this was a great project. I learned a lot. I solved a huge problem I was having. I only spent about $6 on the project, so it was absolutely wonderful. Thanks so much.